AOC pulls a Smollett. The CIA and Canada compare Trump supporters to Al-Qaida, and new updates on the potential COVID lab leak theory. These stories and more on your February 4th Not So News. Starting us off, a recent video thread by AOC has been getting some fact checks at the potential falsehoods in her story, getting a new hashtag trending, Alexandria Ocasio Smollett. In the tweets, a reporter, Jack Prospiek, goes into the theory that AOC wasn't in the Capitol building during her quote-unquote near-death experience. AOC responded with, "This is the latest manipulative take on the right. They're manipulating the fact that most people don't know the layout of the Capitol complex. We were all on the Capitol complex. The attack wasn't just on the dome. The bombs Trump supporters planted surrounded our offices too." Jack then gives the following map, which outlines that the majority of the riots were around the Capitol building. And then about a block away, we have the offices of Katie Porter and AOC. Jack has the line, "Maps cut through the rhetoric." This really just gets into, a theory that's really been building with AOC, that she's really not going to be a long-term politician. Right now, she's really just trying to drive, stories in politics that are really just, fantasies, and less about politics and more about her just getting a social media following. We see her being very popular on Twitter, on Twitch, and it seems like she's going more for the celebrity oligarch style rather than the populist, socialist representative that she was voted in as. Next, MSNBC looks at how to stop Russia from recruiting the next Trump. This is continuing a belief that they had, that they thought Trump was a Russian, or some even claimed that he was a USSR spy. MSNBC gives the following quote. "Now, an American citizen, Shvets, explained to Unger how Trump caught the eye of the Russian spy agency in 1977 when he married his first wife, a Czech model named Ivana Zelnikova. As described in the book, the Czech intelligence service was joined at the hip with the KGB, and they worked in concert to spot and assess Western recruitment targets for Russia." This just makes you understand that there are loonies on both sides of the aisle. If you legitimately believe that Trump served the USSR, you have no place in American news or politics. We can't just keep saying that the only loons that are involved in modern politics are QAnon. We literally have MSNBC promoting a theory that has absolutely no evidence, and they're not even trying to defend their claim. Next, after the Capitol riots, the houses of 2 Trump supporters were raided by the FBI. The justification for the search warrants was that they had a small rally at their houses the night before the Capitol riot. What we realize is this is obviously protected speech under the First Amendment. And afterwards, the FBI did let them go without pressing any charges. CNN reports the FBI recently raided the homes of 2 men who sponsored an invective-laced rally near the U.S. Capitol a day before the deadly insurrection. The first known search warrants involving people who organized and spoke at rallies preceding the attack. CNN learned of the raids through an eyewitness account, public records, a lawyer representing one of the rally organizers, and an FBI spokeswoman who confirmed details of the search. FBI spokeswoman Lauren Eimler confirmed that federal agents executed search warrants last week at 2 properties in Orange County, California, which public records indicate belong to Russell Taylor and Alan Hostetter. The 2 men run the American Phoenix Project, which co-sponsored a pro-Donald Trump rally near the Supreme Court on January 5th, 1 day before the attack. Neither man has been charged with any crime. Now, like everyone else, I think what happened at the Capitol was awful. But this overuse of force being done by the FBI is obviously unheard of. If anyone remembers the lack of privacy that was shown after 9/11 through the Patriot Act, you best believe that these upcoming years are going to be at 10 times worse. But in another story by NPR, the CIA seems to imply that this lack of privacy trend will be the norm. In an interview, a former CIA officer, Robert Grenier, states that those at the Capitol protest should face the same tactics used in wars, and he specifically mentions Afghanistan and Iraq. And they give the following in their article. When it comes to domestic extremists, such as those who stormed the Capitol, a longtime CIA officer argues that the U.S. should treat them as an insurgency. That means using counterinsurgency tactics, similar to some ways to those used in the wars of Afghanistan and Iraq. This makes you wonder and think back to what were some of the tactics used in these wars in the Middle East. Some of the ones that I can kind of remember is that they were arming the insurgents with high military grade weapons, missiles, and trucks. Additionally, the CIA has used tactics such as giving cocaine to try and stop the cartels in Mexico. So maybe the CIA officer was referencing that. Let's be honest, the United States military industrial complex has got a lot more to give to the Capitol riots than they can take. Maybe what's actually going on here is they're calling for the traditional military regime in the US. However, unlike the CIA, Canada takes a slightly different approach to how to deal with the rioters by designating them a terrorist organization. In a recent ruling, Canada designates the Proud Boys as a terrorist organization at the same time as ISIS and Al-Qaida. Once again, I'm not a fan of what happened on January 6th, but this type of declaration is just fanning the flames. ISIS and Al-Qaida have literally killed thousands under the declarations of religious law. At best, the Proud Boys played the part in an event that killed 5. The Guardian reports the following. Canada has designated the far-right Proud Boy groups as terrorist organizations alongside ISIS and Al-Qaida, amid growing concerns over the spread of white supremacist groups in the country. On Wednesday, Bill Blair, public safety minister, also announced the federal government would designate the white nationalists and neo-Nazi groups, the Antof Warren Division, the base, and the Russian Imperial Movement as terrorist entities. The federal government also added offshoots of Al-Qaida, ISIS, Hezbollah, Mujahideen to the list. Canada will not tolerate ideological, religious, or politically motivated acts of violence, Blair said. This leads to another question of how does this affect the US? If you remember when Trump was trying to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization, there was potential because Antifa in other countries could be considered terrorists. So, if Antifa has a protest in Europe, we declare that a terrorist organization, and then we have the authority to, attack Antifa members in the US. We could see a similar thing happening here with the Proud Boys declaration. Even though Canada is declaring the Proud Boys organizations in Canada a terrorist group, that then allows the United States government to consider the United States Proud Boys members as sympathizers with the Canadian movement. This also goes into another trend that we see is that in the United States, it's illegal for the NSA, CIA, etc. to spy on American citizens, but we can spy on citizens in the UK, and the UK intelligence organizations can spy on the US and share intel with each other. This just goes at a giant loophole that we see in the security of our country and how often that's overlooked by our big tech oligarchs. Finally, we have a bit of a COVID update. They always told us to trust the science, right? And what did the science tell us? That the virus came from the wet markets in Wuhan and not from a lab. Well, according to Sky News, a WHO scientist is not ruling out the lab leak theory. In an article, they interviewed Dr. Peter Daszak, who just recently was able to enter the labs in Wuhan, China. And in an interview with Sky News, the doctor reports the following. The WHO mission arrived in Wuhan more than a year after the outbreak there began. But the organization complained about delays in access. But Chinese scientists have been conducting their own research into the origins of COVID-19. In the meantime, Dr. Zalak said, there are little clues we are finding here and there in the wealth of data. They are sharing data with us that we have not seen before, that no one has seen before. They are talking with us openly about every possible pathway. We really are getting somewhere, and I think that every member of the team would say that. This is, really important for us to remember that for the last year that Chinese scientists have been in charge of giving out information on COVID, and we haven't been able to have scientists from, at least locally in the United States or from the WHO to be able to get out and, really look into how the virus started. But continuing in the story, the WHO is scheduled to visit the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Researchers there are handling coronaviruses, but have rejected claims that COVID-19 emerged as a result of a leak. Dr. Daszak told Sky News that possibility has not been ruled out. We're all aware of the hypothesis around a potential involvement of the lab in this, and we're certainly going to ask questions about all the key aspects of the Wuhan Institute of Virology. If there are data that points towards any hypothesis, we'll follow the data, we'll follow the evidence where it leads us. If it leads us to a seafood market and a cold chain, we'll follow it there. If it leads us to a wildlife farm or a wildlife market, we'll go there. If it leads us to a lab, we'll go there. Everything's on the table, and we're keeping an open mind. So at this point, it doesn't seem like there's any scientific evidence that's pointing towards the lab, but he's not giving a declaration that the science has ruled out the lab leak at this point. And anyone who tries to shut down this theory is obviously not being intellectually honest. Like most people, I'm not an expert on virology, and we should listen to those who are. But I'm tired of hearing that this matter is settled. It's far from it. It took a year to get researchers into China, and the only evidence that has been given comes directly from the Chinese Communist Party, who has a record of human rights abuses as shown with the Uyghurs and in Hong Kong. So forgive my skepticism. And this is your February 4th Not So News update. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Have a good one.